Well, I'm actually going to talk about the future of cities, actually, and the context in which those cities need to emerge. I got to say, that presentation by Miles was absolutely fascinating, very rich in content. One thing I have an issue with, the one thing was, that wasn't Star Wars, that slide was taken, it was Star Trek. But apart from that, I agree with absolutely everything he said, because it is about people, it's not about technology. Now, as Anthony said, I'm at Open City. I've taken over from the founder of Open City, Victoria Thornton, who's done an incredible job in engaging the public with the built-in environment, and I want to build on that for the next 25 years. Whether or not I stay there for 25 years, I don't know. Victoria's been there for 25 years, so it's the second age of Open City coming up. Now, what I'd like to do to tell you about the future of cities is not tell you how it's going to be, because futurology is a very dangerous game to get involved in. But what I'd like to talk about is the context in which these cities need to emerge. And I don't have any slides. I certainly don't have an all-singing, all-dancing presentation like we've just seen. And I've got my iPhone here, and I'm going to do that really annoying thing and look at my iPhone as I talk and get through this session. So what we need to do, first of all, is start thinking about, we live in a society, we don't live in an economy. In the last 10 years, we've just been talking about the economy all the time, and nobody talks about society anymore. It's quite strange. We're turning into bean counters. This is worrying. If we start talking about society again, we're going to start to see our homes as places rather than investment opportunities. And that creeping paranoia that is infecting all of us about, is it the right time to sell now? Should I hold on to it a little bit longer? And the kind of disparity that it's creating between the people who are already in the housing market and those who are out. It's not a good place to be, but it's very difficult to step outside of it if you're making a profit as well. But I think the first thing we need to do is reframe how we look at the city. It's part of a society. Cities create societies. Yes, the economy is there, but the economy is in service to the society. So we should all want to live in places, cities, where inequalities are few. So uncoupling the built environment, consciously or otherwise, from being seen as purely a financial instrument is essential. The worry is that the technocratic and market-led solutions have come to dominate how we feel about ourselves. Now, it's come to be seen as progress. We're all guilty of it. We've all got Twitter followers, and we want more Twitter followers. You know, I want as many people to come to Open House London this year, more than last year. I want it to grow. But then we start to kind of forget about the qualitative nature of the experience, and data just takes over, and it becomes the most important thing. So cities just now are obsessed with like visitor numbers, you know? So if a gallery has some great visitor numbers, that becomes the story. It's not what's on show at the gallery, the quality of the work on the show, how that work reflects how we feel about ourselves. And in essence, we're just becoming bean counters as a culture, and that's really dangerous. Basically not good. It's a very reductive view of how we inhabit place. So my next point as well is that we need to start thinking of cities as local and global. Now, the point I'm going to make here is about the High Line. Everybody wants a High Line. Well, everybody can't have a High Line. High Line was in New York. It arose out of a very certain set of circumstances. And I'm alluding here to the Garden Bridge. So the Garden Bridge is kind of masquerading as a kind of ground-up development here, a High Line for London. And I should state, first of all, that I'm not anti the Garden Bridge at all. But that is a top-down solution that's been provided for London, and that is on the wrong side of history now. We're starting to see a lot of kind of ground-up projects. We're seeing crowdfunding, crowdsourcing that allows the community to get involved in making the places that they want to be in. And I think that we have to recognize that as a valid model for development. Now, we missed our chance at the High Line in London. London's High Line could have been Battersea Power Station. That could have been one of the great urban parks in the world, with a consolidated ruin, a kind of castle by the Thames in which you could enjoy yourself in a beautiful garden. That was a real opportunity, but you know, the big numbers, that just changed everything. Now, Terry Farrell suggested that. It's not me with my kind of hippy-dippy, open-minded sort of approach here. The money can be made from turning the Battersea Power Station into a park as well. I'm not a huge fan of what's happening there because I don't think the quality of architecture is great. Now, that leads me on to another point that I want to make, is that not everything needs to be regenerated in a city. We should not be overly obsessed with having everything really shiny and really new. We need a bit of texture in our lives. You need to have something which is a bit ramshackle in order to understand something that is bright and shiny and new. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of King's Cross. I think it's an incredible transformation. But we don't need that done absolutely everywhere. Now, this sounds like I'm anti-development. It's not. It's about having texture and experience. Joseph Rickfert, RIBA gold medal winner, probably the most famous architecture critic of the 20th century and the 21st. He spoke here a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year. He said that the city is a reflection of the human mind. I think that's a really interesting way of understanding it. A city actually reflects our moods and our desires. And if everything is just on one note, we won't have the kind of city that we can properly enjoy. You need a texture of moods. You know, cats still need to have their litter in bombed out buildings and old warehouses where they can fight foxes as well. We need those moments of mystery in cities to keep us excited. So, some pragmatic stuff I'd like to see more of and less of. I'd like to see more drinking fountains in London. It's a really simple idea. They're social. They can be nicely designed additions to the street, and they might bring an end to the bottled water industry, which is probably the most ridiculous con trick that I've ever lived through and that any of us have lived through. It's bizarre. It's like something from a satire. Crazy. So, yeah, drinking fountains. Really, really good, comfortable street furniture. That would be nice. Libraries. There's an idea. Now, why libraries? Well, we wouldn't have cities if it wasn't for books. I'm not going to go into it. Look at the history books, and you'll see how it all happened. And beautiful sculptures in unexpected places, you know? Let's start to sort of populate our landscape again with beauty, rather than overly efficient spaces based purely around ergonomics. Stuff I'd like to see less of: badly erected signage, too many cars in the city centre, pop-ups. Let's have some stay-ups. Handrails everywhere in Britain, and high-vis jackets. Why do all public servants today have high-vis jackets? It looks horrible. Okay, so what am I on about here? What am I driving at? My point, not about the high-vis jackets and stuff, but everything else I was talking about. The point I made about society, not economy, local and global outlooks, and the need sometimes to say, no, let's not regenerate. What this all sort of adds up to is something I call the equitable city. Equitable city is the next stage of sustainability. It's sustainability with people involved. And what I mean about the equitable city is it would be a place where residents have a stake in the design and maintenance of their built environment. So we have co-housing flourishing alongside gated communities. We can have both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. This isn't anti-development, this is pro-development. This is about convincing the development market, the construction industry in general, to get behind the idea of giving something back to the environment in which they're building on, for all sorts of communitarian reasons, but also because it will end up making them more money. Let's take a great example of what I would call an equitable city gesture by British Land, the cheese grater. There's a huge chunk of space removed from the bottom few floors of the cheese grater to create a public space. Now that is a big risk for British Land. That was lettable floor space. They lost a lot of money perhaps doing that, but it did allow them to charge higher rates for the upper floors, and it did create a much more amenable environment in the city, which struggles to kind of retain people after 5 p.m. So, the equitable city, it's a simple idea, and it's one that underpins much of what we do at Open City and Open House, and at Green Sky Thinking, which we have a stand over there. And the equitable city, this idea of involving a wider community and creating a built environment, is an idea that will underpin much of what we do at Green Sky Thinking. So please register for some of our talks. You can go and do that over at a stand right next to this area here. And yeah, if we can start to build cities with this as a guiding principle, I think we'd all like to be there a little longer. Cheers.
Thank you, Rory. Round of applause. Rory, I love your kind of it's come the revolution, and I look forward to your revolution. To be quite honest, it's a very exciting idea. I suppose first, what could we have done to make Battersea more in line with your thinking?
Well, it's an evolution, you know. Revolutions just take you back to the starting point, you know. You go around like that and come back. So it's an evolution. And it is already happening. I think I've sort of given an example there, which I think, you know, British Land have done something very bold there. Battersea Power Station is a much-loved icon. It's not going to look the way it looks once it's been developed. Now, I just sort of think there's a desperation to kind of mimic successes in other cities. But what we have to do is think, how does it emerge from where we are? This idea now that you can just kind of paste an idea into a new environment, it's not always going to work.
Do you think that a city like London is overdeveloped, or is it under-demolished?
Well,
that's demolished Battersea Power
It's a nice sounding question. I don't think we should demolish it. No, I think it should have been a consolidated ruin with a garden around it. But one final thing to say about the High Line. It is brilliant, but it's kind of weird as well if you go there. You've just got people walking along with iPhones, snapping absolutely everything they see. It's not a particularly rich, qualitative experience. And let's remember what the High Line was before. It was a working economy within New York City. It employed hundreds of people. It involved trade. It gave more texture to the city. If we just turn our city into a big leisure zone, it's not going to work.
So developments such as Chelsea and Battersea, I mean, do you think that, I mean, at the moment there isn't any, or there's unlikely to be a sense of community. Do you think that will change, though, over decades?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm ultimately positive. London has survived for 2,000 years, and I think it's been one of the biggest cities in the world for the last 4 centuries. That's pretty good. You know, I don't think it's going to collapse and fall over anytime soon. But there are some massive structural issues that have to be addressed, you know. I think London will survive, but something serious needs to happen. And I do think it's really just acknowledging that we have this new space now. The state has withdrawn from provision of the built environment. So we have this new space where we have to work with the private sector, but we have to fill that space with some commitments, what it means to actually be part of the city, what is a developer's commitment to the citizens, but also what is a citizen's commitment to the city? You know, we should have, I don't mean a written contract, but if you are a member of a society, which we're beginning to forget sometimes because of this obsession with numbers, you will start to just have a richer experience. And I think London's always been at the center of democratic ideas. I can't see it fading, but I think we do need a little bit of a kick up the backside.
Rory, has anyone got any points they want to raise with, maybe about high-vis jackets, the wearing of high-vis jackets around the construction site? No. Rory, thanks very much indeed for your thoughts. I think that go and see Rory over in Open City. I think that life in that organisation...
Green Sky Thinking.
Green Sky Thinking Week. I think life in that organisation is going to certainly be very exciting with you in 2 hours.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks very much
Cheers.
for joining us.
Thank you for asking me. Cheers.